Alright, so welcome back to another Frostborn video. In today's video, we'll be going through the Sand Mage. So the Sand Mage is a new class that is in Season 25. It's introduced to Season 25. And this class is actually epic. I love this class. I think I said I love everything about Season 25 thus far. But bro, the Sand Mage is absolutely a beast. When it comes on to surviving, you guys will see what I'm talking about here. But let's go ahead and take the Sand Mage here. All right, and first thing first, the Sand Mage or the Desert Mage. If you hear me say Sand Mage, I mean Desert Mage. But the Desert Mage is a control and also it's a PvP class. So it's good with controlled in fights during PvP. It's also good at recovering from getting heavy hits from, so for instance, you get a heavy hit from melee, Thrasher, or Valkyries. Once they do heavy hits, it will bring back the Desert Mage up to a good amount of health within the cocoon, but I'll show you later in the video here. Also keep in mind the Desert Mage is specialized in light armor, so if you don't use any light armor while using the Desert Mage, you will not get the full benefits of the armor. The armor would basically act, I think, as a green or blue gear, which doesn't make any sense. So you actually want to use the correct gear with the correct class so you can get the full benefits. Definitely keep that in mind. All right, so I did gather all the PvP gear that I want here. I don't technically have all the PvP gear. As I said before, this is OET. I don't have certain gears, which is fine, but I do have abundance of stuff, and I can also just purchase, a bunch of stuff either way. But let's make our way here, kill these mobs. All right, so I need to show you guys the skill here, how it works, how everything works. So first off, it's time loop. So time loops, after a brief delay, the enemy will be forced to return to the position they were in several seconds ago, and also they get stunned. So let me grab this thing here. Then you could press it, then it will just lead them back. See, immediately with the sand here. So that's a control skill, right? Because keep in mind, the Sand Mage is a control and also a PvP class. This is also a control skill, which is the bomb. You got to use that pretty fast. Boom. You do a lot of damage within that area of effect, and everything in that area of effect gets damage, which is actually absolutely awesome, bro. I'm not gonna lie. So with the time loop skill here, right, as you can see, the sand effect just teleports the enemy back a couple of seconds. So you'd first have to mark the enemy, and you'd have to have them move. So for instance, you're fighting a mage and he stays in one position. Once you mark him, you can quickly click that the time loop thing, and he's not gonna move back in time. The thing that would happen with the time loop skill, it will just let him stunt, because he did move, so you weren't able to reverse his movements to control a fight because he already is standing up. That's the case if he's standing up, right? But if he's moving, once you mark him and once he moves, that's where you'll get the upper advantage, right? Either way, if he's standing in one place, you'll still get the upper advantage of a stunt. You can quickly even drop a stunt trap that fast, but you got to be quite fast though in using that time loop skill to stun an enemy. But just also to keep in mind that once the enemy is moving, then they'll be able to put them back to the position they were in. Keep in mind, I was trying to keep my level low here to see if the cocoon comes up over me, but if they're doing a little bit of hits, like a little hits from mobs and stuff, you will not get that cocoon effect to cover you. You'd have to be getting heavy hits. So you'd have to be getting really heavy hits, which the sand cocoon description here says, when you take lethal damage, a sand cocoon shelter you and restore your health while you're in the cocoon. When the cocoon is destroyed, is exposed and blind the enemies. So even the cocoon, you have to keep in mind that you got to be getting lethal hits, like very hard hits, to get that sand cocoon effect over you. Also, your enemies can definitely destroy the cocoon, but if they're in range while destroying that cocoon, they will get blinded. So that's the blind effect, basically nulls the person. They miss, technically. That's what they blind when they're blind. I thought it would be like something cooler, but that's also cool, They would basically miss their hits. I think it's an 80% chance of missing their hits, but I'll look at it here. It says, when you take lethal damage, sand cocoon shelter you for 10 seconds. While you're inside the cocoon, you are invulnerable and regenerate 10% of your health every second. When the cocoon lifespan expires or enemy destroy it, it explodes, influencing 100% of your weapon damage to the nearby enemies and blinding them for 4 seconds. And a blind enemy attack has 60%, not 80, 60% chance to miss. So the thing is, once you're in the cocoon, every second you regenerate 10% of your health, and once the cocoon explodes, once the enemy destroys it or once it expires, it does do 100% damage of your weapon that you have equipped to the enemy. Once it explodes, also you get that blinding effect. That blinding effect basically helps the enemy to miss a 60% chance to miss. That only lasts for 4 seconds though. That's a good skill. I actually like the Sin Cocoon. That's a survival thing, man. It basically helps you to survive lethal hits. Alright, so we also have here the Sand Bomb. Alright, and so for the Sand Bomb here, so you create a Sand Bomb which explodes after a brief delay, dealing damage to all enemies in the area of effect. The closer the target is to the center of the explosion, the more damage it will take. The enemy will take, of course, up to 250% of your weapon damage. The explosion blinds enemies for 250 seconds. A blind enemy attack has 4% chance of missing. So basically all these skills, after the hits are finished, what happens is that it blinds the enemy for a couple of seconds, which is quite nice, I'm not gonna lie. So my thoughts on the Sand Mage, of course it's a PvP class, and of course it's a control class during PvP, but also it's a survival class. So if you're taking lethal hits like brutal damage, it would go immediately in that cocoon and basically gives you health for every second, a lot of health for so you might even get almost full health, which is insane. That would be very good for PvP. I think I will definitely like this class. Plus it has the time loop that controls the fight, brings you back to your previous position, stuns you. You can also try to land a stun bomb. Also, you have hammers to use in PvP. That's going to be very good for PvP. I am not going to even cap. And the next skill here is time loop. So for time loop, you cast the time loop effect on the enemy in 5 seconds. The enemy will be forcibly returned to the position they were in for 5 seconds. They'll go and get stunned for 1.5 seconds. Keep in mind, once you cast the time loop spell, there's a timer that's on it for 5 seconds. So you'd have to do so within that 5 seconds, right? That's when you'd have to basically loop the enemy. There's a time effect that that time loop thing, it's a control class. It forced the player back to the position they were in, which is quite cool. So for instance, you're even in shipyard, right, and a monster is chasing the dude, man. You just click that time loop. You got to time that though, and once you reverse the enemy back to that mob, that mob could possibly stun him, or even, well, he would be stunned in that position. You could throw a hammer, or the mob could also stun that person, or even taunt that person, because you have those mobs that taunt the persons and stuff. So yeah, this class is super cool. It's super nice. But let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Take care. Peace.